Formal First Contact. Hierarchy Border World Z979. Log of Hierarchy First Contact Officer Endala. I'm writing this down, as per protocol, before physical first contact is made with the fledgling race. We have arrived to Border World Z979, a simple military outpost on the edge of hierarchy space, intended to be a simple early warning system for something from the unknown regions. Inspections verified that its sensors were intact, which raises the question of how this species got here. Their ship did not use any known method of FTL. All FTL ships radiate the same energy signature in order to go in and out of FTL travel, and yet they didn't set it off. It is clearly not a stealth vessel, claiming to be an explorer ship. An explorer ship armed with no less than 8 magnetic propulsion projectile cannons, 114 smaller rapid-fire projectile weapon systems, and 1 forward-facing energy weapon of obscene size. Not to mention the insane size of the ship itself. 15,000 meters in length, angular spear-shaped. It is intimidating, unsettling to look at. And then the fact it has no shielding. They are a truly primitive people. And, as per protocol, we established basic communication, their translators and ours working to get the basic concepts across. We wanted information, specifically language to make communication easy, as well as anything else they were willing to share on their people. Customs, art, anything really to learn about these people. They sent over a crate. I watched as the box flew over to us, propelled, with surprising grace, by little jets of air guiding it to one of our airlocks. In the box we found a cooling unit containing what we assumed to be genetic samples, though we were given 4 samples, 2 red, 2 black with silver specks. A dual species coming from a single world? Not unheard of, but extremely rare. A smaller crate inside was opened and revealed a sculpture of some kind, presumably one of their important figures. A being clad in armor, carrying a shield on their left arm, a large blunt hammer in the other. 2 arms, 2 legs, head. The rest of the figure was hidden under whatever the armor was. So we still have no idea what these people look like without the armor, but it was a good clue to their culture. Armor provides protection, and the shield, more defense. Hammer, a blunt instrument used for building things. So these were a people who defended and built, we surmised. Explains their massive ship. There was a computer device as well. Similar to our own computer tablets, though with far less processing power or storage space, sluggish controls, and seemingly no support for cerebral cybernetic uplinking. But perhaps that's what this wireless Bluetooth system was. Speculation. We found a language database. 20 different languages. 2 species, 20 languages. Thankfully, one was ranked above the others. A dominant language, but they haven't subjugated the other languages before going out into space. Remarkable. A display of unity despite differences. So far, these Gaians were shaping out to be respectable beings. Diverse and able to work through that for a common goal. Language was plugged into our translators and went to work. While that churned along, I explored more of their culture. Music was loaded onto their device, and I decided to take a listen. It was varied as well. Some of it aggressive, others lax. So far among the rather vast selection they provided, I find myself leaning towards this jazz genre. Perhaps I'll have more appreciation for the others, when the translator can make the lyrics understandable. While this is going on, the science folk are studying the genetic samples, grumbling that they didn't use stasis technology, and simply threw it in something cold. Good thing blood didn't need to be warmed to study. I reviewed the Liath Beta's report of their encounter with the Gaian Imperium, the hammer and shield of the people. They responded to a barely understood distress beacon, and defended a pointless world from what they viewed was a hostile aggressive force, which it was. The Nymphilean fleet were wanting to prove themselves in the eyes of the hierarchy, that they could stand, watch and choose a respectable target, right on the fringe of our borders, where it would be difficult for us to respond in time. In fact, it took my ship 2 days to arrive. So far, everything was showing these Gaians as commendable beings. hearty and enduring. Their ship withstood an impressive amount of firepower. Nymphylian ships are some of the hardest hitting, and for them to be outgunned by kinetic weaponry, no wonder they refer to themselves as the hammer and shield blunt objects. They brute force their way through things, yet they have no horns visible in the statue. Perhaps a hard headplate? Best not to speculate. Don't want to unconsciously look upset when their perceived appearance doesn't match their actual one. We made formal vocal communication after some time, finding a suitable frequency their systems could handle that wasn't difficult for us to understand. The first thing they said? We, the people of Gaia, come in peace, to protect the weak from their aggressors, and we really hope we aren't on the wrong side of a war here. I explained the situation to them. A bit of conflict resulting in Liaf Beta losses is how things function, and that they wouldn't be penalized for bloodying Nymphylian noses, as they put it. We assured them that everything was fine, it was how things went. A species gets uppity, does a display of strength, loses some people, but in the end comes out stronger after a bruising. With that out of the way, we set up a meeting to have them come aboard my vessel for proper introductions, get first impressions out of the way, to report back to our higher-ups so the leaders of our people could get together and hash out big-picture details. Their shuttle came over, an odd-looking thing, shaped like a fat avian, angular and a bit intimidating. 3 people exited the shuttle, their representative and 2 guards, all clad head to toe in armor, though the representative had some kind of coat over top of their armor. The guards, with her, were imposing, and they had something of an intensity to them, something that tickled at my long-forgotten instincts from behind their covered faces. Though eventually, the representative removed their mask, revealing that face. That straightforward gaze, those lips curled and fangs, yes, fangs, bared at me. Then they bowed. Admiral Eli Santos, coming aboard Hierarchy Diplomatic Vessel. The documents I read said they displayed their front teeth with a curl of their lips as a greeting. It made no mention of fangs. I'm fairly certain I gulped loud enough for them to hear, as they stood straight up again. Ah, I must be intimidating, being roughly double your size and height. I regained my composure and cleared my throat. I apologize. Culture shock, you must understand. We have never encountered anything like you. I nervously chuckled. I am First Contact Officer Endala Yulna. Pleasure to meet you at last. A chuckle comes from Ellie. Oh boy, then you need to steel yourself and your higher-ups, 'cause there is a lot stranger folk back home than me. I stare at them, then, without knowing what else to do, present my hand for their handshake. At least that was common enough. They took my hand and shook it before nodding. So, my superiors are days away still. I assume yours are similarly. How do you wish to conduct this? I blink and simply motion for them to follow. Standard procedure. We meet, sit down, discuss with each other. We will make mistakes so the higher-ups don't. I looked up behind me at Ellie. Their guards were with them still. They moved so quiet. I was surprised to see them there, as I didn't hear them following with us. Ellie simply nodded in agreement to my statement. We reached the door to the meeting room. I entered first, and Ellie followed behind, arms crossed behind their back. Their guards suddenly took positions outside the door, and stayed there as it closed. I found myself staring at Ellie's face. Something about it was familiar, hauntingly so. Something in the back of my mind was terrified of this being in front of me. Now, I am a Gome. My species are on average a little more than a meter tall. Most beings are much larger than us and intimidating. This Gaian was not intimidating. They were tickling some deep fear inside of me, something long forgotten. Well, let's get settled in and trip over our feet and make mistakes where it doesn't matter, Ellie stated the truth, and snapped me out of my stupor. I suppressed that new emotion of terror for the time being, and focused on my duty. So, your people, Gaian Imperium, therefore your people are Gaians, yes? Ellie gave a nodding shrug. Our collective people, yes. Individually, though, I am a human. Homo sapien of Gaia. We have technically 2 subspecies and 1 alien species living in the Imperium. I recalled now 4 vials. 1 for each species? I wonder what the lab results would be. 4 different species. How did that come to be? The blood samples sent over looked, well, 2 were different from the others, but they looked the same as each other. With a nod and chuckle from Ellie, they leaned back to get comfortable in the chair. Mercifully, they had the same basic anatomy as most sentient beings. For starters, we had been dealing with alien influence for quite a while. I was about to ask questions before they chuckled. I'll get to it eventually. Simply put, a meteor crashed on Gaia during our Unification War. A rather dark period in our history. I'll be happy to discuss later, but for now, let's address your first question. Oh, so many questions I had already, but I let them continue. Admittedly, this is speculation on how it arrived on Earth. We weren't able to track down the exact meteor. All we know is a meteor shower rained on Gaia, and a few months after that, some of our vehicles were behaving strangely. Vehicles? As in motorized transportation? Ellie nodded and continued. As I said, the vehicles started to change. Holes became damp and cool. Strange silver veins grew along the inside of the critical components. After a few weeks, the vehicles became flooded with some kind of nanite fluid. Clearing their throat, and seemingly thinking back on the details of the events. So, a handful of our vehicles, from single-person motorcycles to heavily armored tanks, were quarantined, studied and taught. I simply blinked and stared. You mean to tell me a nanite virus infected your technology and made it sentient? Ellie raised their hands up and shrugged their shoulders, this being translated as a vague, I know as much as you do at this point. Ellie simply leaned forward and sighed. I mean, you guys got, what, advanced tech, right? Surely you lot have heard of weirder stuff, right? I simply shook my head. How many firsts are you people going to bring to the hierarchy? You're already the first species whom on first contact managed to ward off a fleet of some of our best ships, and your ship is, according to you, not even an aggressive model. Ellie simply grinned. I flinched a moment as my translator told me their face was one of pride. Yeah, we made Columbus there tough. Never know what you might find out in the blacker space. Clearly a paranoid people. But what about that smile bothers me so much? Ellie simply shifted in their seat again. So we decided to call the virus the Dire Machine virus, or D1R3, because scientists are nerds at heart and love in-jokes. From that we made steps to properly incorporate this new species into our growing society. We were losing. We weren't at war, but we were trying to peacefully conquer the globe. But I'm rambling. Clearing their throat again. We incorporated these new beings into our ranks. Things were going bumpy. Tensions between us. Other nations worried about this nanite plague infecting vehicles. The other nations were not as kind as we were in our studies of the Dire Machines. And we were probably more lax than we should have been about interactions between people and the Dyers. Ellie fidgets, a hint of embarrassment on their face. And so we discovered that the nanite virus does affect organic material, if given repeated exposure. And it manages to convert enough of an individual, they grow an organic steel-like material in their extremities, hands and feet mostly. And with that are capable of, well, no point beating around the bush, successful breeding between the two resulting in what we refer to as technomorphs. So the Gaian Imperium has a race of living sentient machines with them. The idea of a subservient species isn't that foreign to the hierarchy. Quite a few races have been uplifted for that purpose. And robot helpers are, again, needed in many areas. However, machine life? Sentient technology that they just stumbled across by chance? You realize this is extremely far-fetched, yes? I asked Ellie, staring at them while typing this down. Well, considering we colonized our whole solar system and went through So many empty solar systems with no signals, no signs of life, nothing. We picked up nothing on long-range sensors, nothing at all until that distress signal, and we barely heard that. All we understood was help, in trouble, and came to assist. I say that should speak for who we are as a people, rather than what makes up our flesh and blood. I have to admit, they have a point. Very well, and I take it these dyers are going to be part of the delegation meeting with the higher-ups? Ellie blinked with confusion and cleared their throat. Ah, no. That would be Cerberus, which is 2 humans like myself and 1 anthropomorphic being. I put on my best "I am waiting for you to explain" face, and Ellie obliged. Right. I mentioned the dire machine thing because it leads into how the anthros were created. As I said, around the time of the Unification Wars, things were chaotic. We had this one organization, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA. Despite their name, they did the opposite. During the chaos of our Imperium growing, they grew increasingly hostile, became a terrorist organization even, and they got a hold of a D1R3 sample, one that the Americans were toying with to try and make super soldiers, and, well, PETA decided to stuff it full of animal genetics and release it into the wild. All over. With a groan, Ellie's hands slid across their face. Thankfully, all they did was cause newborn people to be born with animal traits. That's how it started, anyway. Some child born in Germany with foxes and a tail. Months later, another born in Egypt with scales and a serpent tongue and tail. Finally, a year after that, the first fully anthropomorphic being, a cat, was born in Switzerland. This was because PETA, in their warped way, wanted to bridge the gap between man and animal, to humanize animals so people don't abuse them, as they claimed. So yeah, it worked. The Imperium simply shrugged and accepted them as people, as we had done with the dire machines. More people, more strength. Other nations, not so much, but I'm rambling history again. I finished typing for a moment and focused on them. So not only have your people survived a potentially dangerous nanite viral outbreak that could have crippled your infrastructure, you survived a potential schism in your species due to this nanite virus converting your people, and you survived a bioweapon outbreak that was threatening to replace the dominant species with a variety of other species? I'm just staring at them. These people have gone through so much in... How old are they as a species? How long ago has this happened? On top of all that, I don't even know how long ago this was for your people. Ah, time differences. And yeah, when you put it like that, it's kind of amazing we survived all that. But it did come with a cost later on that would be something for the higher-ups to discuss. I won't touch on that topic here. But time, little more than half a millennium ago, our time. Every year is a rotation of Gaia around our sun, so for us the year is 2678 AD. Unification started around 2056, and all this happened over the course of 50 years during that time. I have no references for the revolution speed of their planet around their sun, but it can't vary that much from other life-sustaining worlds, so fairly similar. Either way, it appears to have been a long time in their past from how they speak about it. And still their technology is this primitive? That is, I am guessing here, after all, a long time. How is your technology not advanced? I heard a strange tone from Ellie, my translator picking it up as mock offence. Why, I never. We have advanced technologically a great deal since then. Gore's weaponry has been perfected. We have also perfected slit space travel, and terraforming of worlds. They responded to my statement of facts and responded with a joke, showing that what I said might be considered an insult. Something to note to the council. Pardon, but compared to the hierarchy, your technology is woefully out of date. No shield technology, still using kinetic projectile weaponry as your main offensive and defensive tools. And not to mention your portable computer technology. And don't even get me started on whatever insane method you use to travel. Every species the hierarchy has found or discovered use the same basic principles for faster-than-light space travel. It all produces the same energy signature, no matter how they actually get the engines going. Ellie grinned that prideful and terrifying smile again. Slit space drives. Massive gravity well is created and we curve space between the point where our ship is and where our destination is. Near instant travel, but has a range limit. We had to jump 3 times before reaching this planet. The insanity of it all. The absolute insanity. I stammer. You curve space with an artificially created gravity well and just fly to where you need to be? That is the most awesome method of space travel. I know, out of our best science fiction. I gasp. It's insane. Dangerous. How do your people survive the intense gravity? I mean, artificial gravity dampeners on the ship, plus a sturdy hull. Everything is designed to compensate for the travel. How does your FTR stuff work? With a groan, I lean forward, stroking my horns with a sign. I have just been given a bombshell of a technological difference. Ship mass is manipulated by the FTL drive, and it is accelerated at a faster-than-light speed. The energy signature generated by such is unmistakable. It's how we find wells to welcome to the hierarchy, because the method you described was deemed scientifically unsound, unsafe, and lethal to the occupants on board the vessel. Ellie simply blinked. Did you ever try it? Of all the questions. No, the energy needed wasn't a problem. It's just a matter of intense gravity. Not to mention hazardous radiation from the energy sources needed is intensely lethal to all life. Ellie nodded. Yeah, nuclear fission is a bitch to deal with. Still amazed vodka helps. But those who do end up with cancer due to improper shielding of engine compartments are given the best care. Many make a full recovery. I did not just hear that. I refuse to believe what I just heard. You people are going to be given so many sanctions for endangerment of yourselves. Ellie looks at me with obvious confusion. You just said you have a nuclear fission engine for your ships, yes? I did hear that correctly, despite my intense desire to wish I didn't. Ellie simply nodded, and I slumped back in my chair. That technology has been banned since the beginning of the hierarchy. Ellie simply nods, clearly making mental notes. Well then, give us the tech and we can see about refitting our ships with your superior methods. I let out a groan, and mimic Ellie's earlier action. Hands across my face in mild frustration. Right, I remembered something. You managed to colonize an entire star system, yes? And you have visited many since? How many colonies do you have? How many ships that you can just casually offer to refit all of them with new tech? How can you afford that? That grin again. Afford? As in money? Oh, I swear, if this Imperium somehow is working off a tribal barter system instead of a monetary one, I am going to retire immediately after this assignment. Maybe even in the middle of it. They are proving to be the very opposite of what I had seen. Yes, money. How do you people get anything done if you don't exchange currency for tasks and duties? It's what keeps people motivated and working. They laughed softly, and simply stared down while doing so. Oh, please forgive me, it's just, well, we followed some rules of ours when we created the Imperium. The goal was to make a culture to unify our planet, be welcoming of all and do our best so they keep our culture while following our laws. We believe that for a civilization to be, well, accepted into galactic society, we would have to be of a certain society sophistication. Something resembling a utopia, meaning no homeless, no people going hungry. The needs of life for even the lowest of our society will be provided for. We have all those things, yes, but money is still used within cultures and between species to exchange for technology, information, all manner of things. A sigh escapes me as I type away. You are a very, very strange people. How do you motivate your people without money then? If all their needs are met, how do they not just laze about and do nothing? 2 reasons. 1, our people cannot be idle. Always doing something. When given the freedom to choose what they want to do, though, without the worry of not having a home, without the worry of will I have enough money for food, they focus on their desires, goals, pursuits with intensity. A proud smile on Nenny's face as I examine their words. What kind of people can't be idle? Second, we have a hierarchy to our society. There are the migrants and the citizens. Now for everyone, basic needs, even most wants, are addressed. Migrants get group housing in apartment complexes. Citizens get their own homes. Migrants use public transportation. Citizens can own their own vehicle. Migrants can have certain quality of food. Citizens can get higher quality. Those that perform well can become a citizen, or earn a boon, such as one of the benefits that citizens have. I simply nod my head. A caste system, crude but effective. Work your way up society. I'm still fixated on the need for activity. Most races in the hierarchy have bursts of energy, but all of them can very easily become complacent and lazy and just not do anything. That is acceptable, but your lack of a monetary system will be difficult to get over. A sigh escapes Ellie, as the head leans back before they lean forward again. Precious metals, rare minerals, the universal currency is materials. Your people no doubt have a price for gold, iron, other such materials. We can offer these up in exchange for your currency and go from there. Internally we will never again adopt a monetary system. It breeds greed and corruption in our people. And I feel bad for the people who become the treasurers. The Inquisitors will be keeping an eye on them. Ellie shudders at the mention of these Inquisitors. And these Inquisitors are your internal police force, I presume? The word translated to something strange. Seeker of truth. Ellie nodded. They were made with the founding of the Terran Imperium. The first stage of our Imperium when we set out to conquer all of Gaia. A proud but melancholy expression fell on Ellie's face. They were made by Matrixis, a strange alien whom our founders discovered out in the desert. Some forgotten Nazi scientist lab, trying to uncover the secrets of her people. She aided the founders of our Imperium, gifted them the only technology she had to give, and created the Inquisition. No one but the Inquisition knows how the Inquisitors are made, but they are something else. Unyielding, incorruptible seekers of truth. I simply scoff. Incorruptible? Anyone could be tempted, swayed somehow to go against their beliefs, even for a brief moment. I look the other way over some trivial matter. Ellie stared at me with an intensity that made me want to curl in on myself. Not the Inquisitors. I don't know how they do it, but in the entire history of our Imperium, not a one has ever turned against the Imperium or its ideals. They would sooner die. It's something in how they are made. People are chosen. Those who show devotion to the Imperial ideals are taken, trained, and some survive and become Inquisitors. I managed to regain myself after their moment of intense passion. And so you just trust these people to police you, tell you what to do. Ellie groans. They don't do that. They make sure the politicians don't get power hungry or try to change things that would bring about the collapse of the Imperium or corrupt it from within. Clearing their throat. We are the hammer and shield because we are strong. The strong protect the weak, and we are the hammer and shield. A mantra of some kind. The Gaian people's creed, it would seem. An admirable statement. Still, these Inquisitors, surely they have some oversight, someone they report to. They can't just remove an elected... Wait, your leaders are elected, yes? Ellie chuckled and nodded. Yes, we elect our leaders, and yes, they can remove an elected official from office by force. By extreme force if needed. So far in our entire history, that has never happened. However, governors of colonies and the like have gotten uppity. They were mostly removed from office by the people, a vote of no confidence, and then quietly taken away by Inquisitors to make sure their ideals are not spread to others. That was a scary thought. And who was Matrixis? You said she was an alien that aided your people. It's not uncommon for worlds to have run into a lone being from another world, but for them to have aided you in such a way is curious. A potentially unknown race aided in uplifting these people, and left these Inquisitors behind to keep them in check. This has Moltok incident all over it. The Liaf are probably behind this. Ellie smiles. I'll never get over that fret display of happiness, and as a greeting. Insane people. She was an alien. 8 foot tall, pale white skin, solid ebony eyes, no hair. We have some hysterical recordings of her I can share with you, but just imagine me, but much taller, much paler, and my eyes all black. Ellie smiled again, just as I envisioned what she said. That is why she terrified me, but no. Prometheans were long dead at worst, myth at best. I must not be remembering correctly. I'll have to examine these records of Ellie's. For now, on with the meeting. And she just did this out of, what, the kindness of her heart? She practically uplifted your people from the sounds of things. Without her, you probably would have collapsed and never made it where you are now. With a nod of agreement, Ellie resumed speaking. That is very much true. She gave us the matter conversion technology and the Inquisitors to police us, but the Founders set the ideals the Inquisitors would ensure. The strong protect the weak, never oppress. We will always seek peaceful resolution to societal conflicts, never seek active conflict. But if such cannot be achieved, we will hold no punches should it come to war. A chuckle escaped Ellie. The Imperator said it best. War is what happens when civilizations fail. If it comes to war, civilization will not hinder or impact war. We can and will beat you into submission. We will leave you scarred after the conflict in such ways you never consider war again. And we will always live in fear of having to do it again. Always hoping, praying, we never again have to unleash that horror upon others or ourselves. But I am glad she passed on peacefully. I have so many questions. Address in chronological order. Excuse me, matter conversion technology? That is a wholly unstable and dangerous technology, breaking down materials into raw atoms, and reconstructing them as something else requires. And then it hits me. Their nuclear fission. No wonder they love it so much. That much power, unstable as it may be, would allow them to power such a dangerous technology. Never mind, you've told me about your fission generators. But still, for it to create a stable product, the math just isn't there yet. And this alien just gives you the technology? The base materials still have to be similar. And we still have to have a blueprint of the end result material. The problem is, it will be a copy of the blueprint. So say we took dirt and made it into sand. We have a few hundred variations of sand, but there are billions of variations of sand. The dirt is converted only into that few hundred variations. Kind of like cloning matter, almost. And energy limitations as well. We can only make so much of a resource a day, and we still have to consume enough other raw matter to compensate. Ellie clears their throat and leans forward. Does trading 1,000 kilograms of lead for 100 kilograms of gold sound like a fair trade? I shake my head. So the technology has conversion limits, and they still require mining? So what good does this technology do you then? I inquired with a growing curiosity. Ellie simply chuckled. Feeds us. The basic needs of life are easy to replicate. Grain to feed our farm animals, raw materials to build housing and roads. It's fantastic for recycling. That was a good point. Any waste materials could be broken down and remade into something similar, but useful. And these people have it and have done so little with it. But I guess they have done much. Their people don't starve without the need of firm coaxing to work. I returned to an unanswered question. And this Matrixis? You never did say why she helped your people. Ellie's face flushed red. Right, I rambled, forgive me. Nostalgia for history, a personal weakness. She helped us because we were her children. No. Do not say what I think you're going to say next, please. She said her people seeded our world with life millennia ago, and that her people faded. Their hubris brought about their end. Greed, paranoia, cruelty. We had inherited that from her people, and yet the founders presented her with hope. That her children, the legacy of her people, need not suffer the faults of the parents. And so when they asked for her aid in building a new society, she questioned them, endlessly, tirelessly. Ellie shrugs her shoulders. Records from that time are rose-coloured, written after the events. Suffice to say, they impressed her with their tenets, with who they were as a people, and their reluctance to accept her gift. A chuckle escaped Ellie. The founders asked for the conversion tech to be purposefully reduced. It was capable of direct energy to matter conversions, but the efficiency was massively reduced to the point we have to use half a Dyson sphere just to make a few thousand kilograms of matter. It doesn't matter what kind of material we make, but it requires an obscene amount of power. No. The White Death, the Plague Bearers, the Great Death Order Horror, the Prometheans. It can't be coincidence. The description, while vague, is too similar. Seeders of planets, matter conversion technology. They were a horror story, great beings who wiped worlds clean of life and replaced it with their own. Beings who had the technology to create worlds from nothing. The great architects of the galaxy that burned themselves into non-existence with their unspeakable weaponry that they unleashed on themselves in envy of each other. And I'm sitting in a meeting room with one of their possibly only remaining creations. This human. The Council must be made aware of this. I will present the information as I have it here. They will hopefully come to the same conclusion as me, or find something I missed, and it would have all just been my imagination from stress. I very much hope for the latter. You all right over there? You look like you're having an existential crisis. I snap out of my own mind and chuckle nervously. Kind of. You are a strange people. That technology is something that the hierarchy... I'm cut off by Ellie abruptly. No, non-negotiable. As per Imperial doctrine, the MCT will remain forever under direct Imperial control due to its hazardous nature and ability to decimate civilizations not ready to receive it. Well, that should have been expected, but that was still intensely spoken. Imperial doctrine. I can understand, but the Council will use that as leverage to sanction your people rather harshly. Let me be blunt and informal for a moment. Ellie adjusted their coat over their armor's suit. We wish for peaceful interactions with your hierarchy. That is all. We will not be ruled by you, because you cannot rule us. We are beyond your borders. At most, we will request explorers be allowed to traverse your space. Beyond that, we will request and require little of your hierarchy. We have survived just fine without you until now, and will continue to do so. Ellie stands up. I'm reminded of how small I am compared to them. We will not be politically bullied into releasing a potential plague upon your people. And should your bosses view that as a threat? Oh, that smile. How I fear that smile on Ellie's face. Remind them that one of our explorer ships, not even a warship, stood its ground against 10 of your best ships. We mine entire worlds by cracking them into chunks and breaking them down in the void of space. Ellie lets out a sigh, that melancholy expression on their face again. Please, just let us go about in peace. We do not wish for war, but if it comes to it... Well, you seem to have a fear of nuclear power. We, on the other hand, love it. And that's not even the worst of our weaponry. Nuclear weaponry? The Imperium has nuclear weaponry? It's bad enough they are using it for powering their ships, but as a weapon of war. And I then realized I was cowering in my chair. I believe that concludes any potential slip-ups for our higher-ups to avoid, yes? I am mentally drained from all of this. These psychotic people that may very well be the inheritors of the Promethean legacy. Yes, please. I will advise my higher-ups as best they can to not fall into the same pitfalls I did. With that, Ellie nodded and bowed, their hand over their chest. And I shall do the same. That friendly smile unnerves me, more so now than it did before, because I understand why it unnerves me. We have no actual record of the Prometheans. The only reason we know anything at all is too many different species with similar stories. Tales of powerful beings visiting their worlds, watching them. White skin, eyes of the void, predatory gazes, and that smile of theirs. Those teeth. Every world under the hierarchy has an instinctual response of terror when exposed to an image of an entity of that design. Now most species have instinctual responses to stimuli. Some salivate at the smell of certain leaves or burning of wood, others at the sight of the food itself rather than the smell. Occasionally, two species share similar stimuli from the same source. But for hundreds of species to all share this instinctual response to these beings? To have similar stories of these predators from the stars? It's theorized the Prometheans seeded all life in the galaxy, and as such left their mark, this instinctual fear of them, in every sentient being. For what purpose? Speculation leads to, well, why would anything want to be feared? To subjugate, dominate uncontested. And yet, these beings are gone? No trace of them is seen. No ruins have been discovered. Nothing showing they existed at all. It's all just speculation, theories. As such, it's treated as fiction. I am disturbed by a ping on my system. The information from Ellie had arrived. Historical documents to pore over, cultural customs, things like that to go over with a fine tooth comb. And to that, pictures of this matrixes. I am not so proud as to admit I became paralyzed. I stared at the image, those eyes, staring into me from the ancient still image. I had apparently stopped breathing as well, as my head soon started pounding from lack of air, and I breathed and snapped out of my stupor. I flagged the images with a warning, and simply moved the information onto someone else. I am retiring.